I just had a young man reach out to me who I've known from about 2014 to present, and he's a social worker, and he's like, hey man, you know, I'm looking for therapy. Can you help me find some options? And since I helped him find some options, the next thing we're running into right now is payment. You know, with everything going up from groceries to rent to car payments and interest payments, right now folks are trying to figure out what's the best way that I can help myself and still keep food on the table and be able to get around and be able to live and enjoy life, which I think is very important, especially with how everything is in 2024. That's where we are right now. Yeah, summer of 2024. And I really do keep these things in mind. So if someone comes to me and gets therapy, that's one thing. But after getting therapy or lining up their options, if the options are too expensive, I now got to go back to the drawing board and figure out how do we get this person a more affordable option when it comes to therapy. What are the other resources? And, you know, how do I not burn those resources out? Or if that resource is burnt out, are there other resources that I'm looking into or people I'm reaching out to that may have a budget to help these people that are already helping the community? Because the people that are helping the community, the people that are in the community, both those people need help and they deserve to be able to be helped. Hey, what's up? It's your boy Juice Jones from Get Home Safe, and we're back. As you can see, got a fresh cut. Back in the building, and we are in a new studio space. I don't even remember what I spoke about last time in terms of things we're going to be bringing to life or stuff that we're going to be working on, but we finally got the space up and running, working on a couple of interviews. I think last week I did a couple of interviews with some doctors, interviews with a couple of folks that play football at D2 programs, and I had a really special interview with one of my folks that I've known for about 12 years that have done a lot of work in the entertainment industry when it comes to a lot of different music venues, from like Lincoln Theater, 930 Club over there by U Street off of 9th. And, you know, just talking about where the culture is, how children have been coming out of the pandemic and everything else, and how we're seeing how mental health is being handled or not handled, or the maturity of the next generation of kids that are now becoming adults and what that looks like in the industry. I'm just glad to be back. Getting the studio together has been tumultuous in terms of art mid placement. I hope you guys enjoy the Get Home Safe painting in the back. Was working that for a little bit. I was like, ooh, boom, pop. Get Home Safe art, boom. And the spacing, as you can see, the studio's much larger. Instead of the painting being like 6 feet back, now I'm dealing with a space that's like close to 10 by 13 or something like that. This is actually kind of weird. I don't even think I have enough lights to light the entire space as is. But coming out of moving, setting up the new studio and getting this space together and running interviews, I've come to realize that I've done a lot of work with a lot of folks, and this is not just the time of year, but my time for me to check in with a couple of folks. So I've been asked various questions, and I think it's a good time for me to answer some of these questions that in today's episode's actually not a sit down, but I was sent a couple of questions by folks who I've done work with over the past couple of years from about 2019 to present. And since I'm back and I'm getting the studio space together, instead of focusing so much on the interviews and what I've learned, I'd like to just answer personal questions in terms of where's Get Home Safe headed? What's the work that we're doing? Why haven't I done certain things and what those things may look like? And then either figuring out how I'm going to go about doing those things at a later date, or if I'm even keeping these things in mind, because when it comes to running this business, in terms of reaching out to the community, when it comes to mental health, when it comes to wellness, or when it comes to just what's going on in folks' lives practically, I think it's important that I'm able to keep in mind what are the people who I'm doing work with thinking of, and how do they feel or not feel about the content that we've made or the work that we're doing together, or maybe even what's next for us in the coming stages of all things Get Home Safe, Mental Health Monday, or In My Shoes. So one of the questions I was asked recently is, are we going to partner with social work schools? So when it comes to the work that Get Home Safe has done so far, from 2019 to present, we've done a lot of mental health outreach when it comes to the city of DC. We've done a couple of pop-ups in Philly. We've done a couple events in New York. We were actually supposed to do an event in New Jersey, but that got shut down in 2020. Obviously, that explains itself. And during that time, we went from doing a lot of in-person events to more so attacking social media on the YouTube end, Instagram end, and TikTok end, and really figuring out, all right, since the world shut down and everything is closed, what does mental health outreach look like? And with that being said, you've seen an uptick in me being willing to interview therapists on camera, me being willing to share people's stories and share it in a frame that other people can learn from other people's experiences. Me even going so far as to sharing my own story in terms of what brought Get Home Safe into fruition, the folks that I've worked with. And there's also been a bigger pivot in my team going from a team of about 7 to 8 people to just 1 to 2 people, depending on what we have going on right now. So in order for us to do work with a school, I think what would be important is, what would Get Home Safe gain from working from that school, and what would that school gain from working with an organization like Get Home Safe? And unfortunately, what you find is there's a lot of yellow tape when it comes to the work that we do. So I'm lucky that I get to sit down and do these interviews with therapists, sometimes work with therapists on events that we have going on, or work with folks in the wellness community in terms of public speaking engagements with my boy Brandon. I've done a couple events with him, events with my boy Britt, and just other events prior to that. Shout out to China when we did the Sound Bowls. We did, well, not speaking events with China. That was more so between China and Jasmine, bringing wellness to the community when it came to sound bowl therapy or yoga, because Jasmine also does yoga. If you guys ever want to reach out to Jasmine, I'll put her contact in the bottom. Great yogi. Amazing. Shout out to Pittsburgh. And what it really came down to was, is there enough examples in the community? And the community that I predominantly cater to is the Black community, but you have a lot of folks from other communities that come through and visit the events that we do. And are we accomplishing helping people get mental health resources? Are we accomplishing figuring out other options for folks when it comes to more affordable options? I just had a young man reach out to me who I've known from about 2014 to present, and he's a social worker, and he's like, hey man, I'm looking for therapy. Can you help me find some options? And since I helped him find some options, the next thing we're running into right now is payment. With everything going up from groceries to rent to car payments and interest payments, right now folks are trying to figure out what's the best way that I can help myself and still keep food on the table and be able to get around and be able to live and enjoy life, which I think is very important, especially with how everything is in 2024. That's where we are right now. Yeah, summer of 2024. And I really do keep these things in mind. So if someone comes to me and gets therapy, that's one thing. But after getting therapy or lining up their options, if the options are too expensive, I now got to go back to the drawing board and figure out, how do we get this person a more affordable option when it comes to therapy? What are the other resources? And, how do I not burn those resources out? Or if that resource is burnt out, are there other resources that I'm looking into or people I'm reaching out to that may have a budget to help these people that are already helping the community? Because the people that are helping the community, the people that are in the community, both those people need help and they deserve to be able to be helped. So what does that look like? And in terms of partnering with a social work program, what you find is, the last program that I was thinking of partnering with, a little school called GW. And with that program, they have therapists who were getting their masters in terms of social work. But unfortunately with that program is, they're allowed to give therapy on a sliding scale. So that means that you can help people out at a lower cost compared to what it would be used to. So if you have $20, they may be able to make an exception and give you therapy sessions for $20 per therapy session. But unfortunately with that, or my thinking is, all right, so it's students, that means they're only going to be working on this for a semester or two. And once that semester is done, you're going to have to reapply to that program and rebuild that relationship with a different therapist. So if you're not going to be able to follow that therapist wherever they go, if they do stay in state, you're going to have to now go through the whole process of getting a new therapist. When it comes to the process of getting a new therapist, therapy is like dating. That means You got to figure out, hey, am I going to be a right fit for this person? That's number one. Number two, will this person be able to adapt or see where I'm coming from when it comes to my culture and how I've been raised and what I've gone through? Number three, which may be another concern, hey, can I afford this person? That's usually the first thing, but sometimes you're going to go through the process of feeling this person out before getting to, hey, how much is this going to cost? And then, when you get to number four is, all right, how long is this person going to be available for when you get a therapist? Because when you get a therapist, the first therapist you get isn't always going to be the best fit of a therapist in terms of the therapy that you're looking for, but it's going to be a starter. And if you found that you've learned everything you can from the therapist and you're more aware of what you're going for, you may come to realize the therapist that you originally got may not be a good fit for where I'm growing in terms of the direction that I'm going into. And if I partner with a school, you also have yellow tape from the school. A lot of my platform on certain days or certain topics, we may touch on suicidal ideation. We may have stories of people that talk about what is it like to go through an episode. I just had a young man. It was a 3-part series in terms of Mania. We had one interview, which was the introduction interview, where he told us his story in terms of him dealing with the episode and dealing with being bipolar and getting medication for that. And then episode number 2, we talked about, what was the fallout of your episode? What did it look like? His father pulling up to get his back, him going to the hospital, how he was treated in his episode, things still being blurry for him and, trying to figure out what's next for him in life. And then episode number 3, which is an episode that we just dropped about a month and a half ago. And now we're talking about, being back on the up and up and still having a sense of guilt for everything that he went through and the people that were involved. And what does life look like for someone that has had a mania episode that lasted about 1.5 years. Certain schools may not want to be associated with that kind of platform that handles those kind of stories. Certain schools, not just DW, GW, other schools may have a certain prestige that keeps them from wanting to do work like what we do with Get Home Safe, but you won't know until you ask. So with that in mind, I'll probably create a list of about whatever schools are in DC and a couple in Maryland, let them know about the work that we do and what would a partnership between Get Home Safe in terms of work that we're doing on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok and that school look like. And, how would we be able to funnel more resources, funnel more stories, and build greater opportunities for these schools to have a greater media presence through Get Home Safe. So, Trey, appreciate you reaching out. Ask me that question. I never really thought of that. No, actually I have thought of that, but when it comes to schools, building new relationships are exhausting, especially when it comes to a bigger, greater body of work in terms of schools. So, if my folks are there who are therapists or teachers or professors, that makes the integration of Get Home Safe and the work that I do much easier. But when it comes to other schools, there may be other things that they're expecting of the organization outside of just proof of work. Most people would be like, well, why would they want other things outside of proof of work? They may want to investigate, hey, what's the work that you've done? Have you actually gotten 250 folks into therapy? Can we trust the word of this person? Can we trust them with funds if there's a fundraiser? Do you have an LLC? If you have a nonprofit, which was another question that I was asked earlier, in terms of if you don't have a nonprofit, can we legally give them money? Is that money tax? What does that look like? If you're not a nonprofit, how do you accept money? What does that look like? And how does that come up for a school when it comes to the tax side of things or the greater side of, hey, taking care of what you need to on a business? That's important because once you start accepting money or once you start getting in rooms, having meetings, planning events, that's automatically business way before money is in the conversation. And outside of that, do I have the proper credentials for that school to feel safe that we can build in the right direction? I've garnered a lot of great relationships, and I think I've done my best to maintain the relationships as is, or at least leave the door open if folks ever need to reach out to me. But when you go from a team of 7 or 8 down to just 1 or 2 people, I'm the main catalyst when it comes to answering emails. I'm the main catalyst when it comes to doing sit-down meetings. I'm the main catalyst when it comes to planning things out. Right now, I'm working with a doctor who's a pediatrician, Dr. Jones. She's going to be amazing. I love all the work that she has coming down the pipe. Dr. Bean, just did a sit down with him. The references for that, the episode's probably coming out this same week that we're dropping this episode. We just let me see, what is it? Monday night episode's appearing on Tuesday, even though it's titled Mental Health Monday. And then this is coming out on Friday. He owns a private practice from Southeast DC. Him and his brother run a private practice together, and they're doing a great job on the business end and the personal end. And, you know, one is stuck to being a therapist, but also a professor because he's big on education. And the other one is big on Lakeith, if I'm not mistaken. He's big on practicing and implementation of the theories, and stuff like that fascinates me. But when you're juggling all these hats, it's very important to, like, hey, find balance in everything that you're doing, because I'm bigger on the quality that we're delivering to the community and the people that would like to work with us than being the person that's just doing everything and not having a better measure of what's the quality, what's the low end, what's the high end. Are we accomplishing the things that we'd like to accomplish within the community? And if not, are we willing to part ways with a concept that may not be serving the community right now, and keeping in mind there's all these other things that I could be doing and taking my time with building it correctly? You know, I'm just one man. It's not that it's not a bad question, but it's like, you know, when you start to build when you start to build a reputation of being one who starts a bunch of things that isn't completed correctly, or you're not really seeing it through to the end, that reputation, it follows you, and people look forward to that reputation. So I'm not one to protect my reputation, but I am one to keep in mind, hey, your reputation is getting bigger and bigger, and you have to be careful with how that's executed. And at the end of the day, when you look back at the work that you've done, are you taking care of what you need to take care of? You know, are you keeping the promises that you're making to the community? Are you doing those promises correctly? And if not, are you looking back and are you fixing your mistakes? So anytime you get back in contact with someone who may need that help, or someone who believes in you, or someone who's depending on you, are you going to be willing to do what needs to be done to accomplish that correctly and cleanly, and hopefully take care of what you've promised the community? You know, we make a lot of promises when it comes to folks who are therapists, when it comes to folks in the wellness community, when it comes to folks that are putting these events together. And as you create and make these promises, it's very important that you are a man or woman of your word, and your word is all you have. You know, whether you're he, she, they, them, the community is what we serve, and the community serves us too. They support us. They help us become who we one day would like to be. And a lot of the work that we do starts way before people get a chance to believe in us. You know, it's just our opportunity to prove them right about who they thought we were. And that's actually the easiest part, because getting things started is usually the hardest part. Between that and being consistent, if you have a good consistency, that actually serves the folks that you're looking to serve. Would I be open? Question number 2. Would I be open to doing work with a behavioral health agency as some non-traditional interventions? I'd be open to that. I'd be open to doing work with a non-traditional. I'd be open to working with a behavioral health agency that's non-traditional. I may need to follow up with you on that to, like, have an example of what does that look like, because all I know right now are therapists. I know therapists that do works in hospitals. I know therapists that does work in private practices. I know therapists that, you know, they just do it through insurance out in Maryland. I just had to sit down with one of my folks. She shall remain nameless, and we did sit down. We talked about all the work that she's done, her drawing up her dream board, her becoming a therapist, and us doing a sit down, and me really getting to know a friend who I've known for quite some time. That's like a decade old relationship, and just hearing about what has life been like for someone who's a therapist, who's a woman in the industry when it comes to the state of Maryland, and what does therapy look like, and what are the gray areas? What are the I've reported things to cops, and even though you file a report, the issue is still in the home that's not being taken care of? And what does it look like? What capacity of person do you have to be to just accept all these things that are happening that you may be able to help or not help, unfortunately? And, you know, I'm learning a lot as I go. So I'm going to follow up on that question. All right, question number 3. What I think about facilitating more talks with athletes and mental health sharing of my personal journey to trying out professionally. Ooh, man, that's a hard one. For me, that would be hard. I mean, I'm open to having the conversation with athletes. I actually just interviewed an athlete that plays for a D2 school out in West Virginia recently. We talked about NIL deals and what does that look like for a D2 athlete. We talked about the scholarship system in terms of D2 athletes. We talked about, coaches mishandling athletes and how disappointing moments like that can be. And even with that being said, I think another thing that it comes down to is, accepting the fact that I've never had a professional contract as someone that was chasing the NFL, but also acknowledging, hey, you came from a D3 program, and the coaches who I thought would have had the film, because everything I did when I was doing tryouts was by myself, no film was saved. I thought most schools, if you played sports there, that they had to hold on to the film for like 5 to 6 years or something like that. Someone back in the day told me something like that, but by the time I came around to my coach to ask him for the film, which I think it was like a year or 2 into me doing tryouts, or a year 3, I needed film of me to send to, I wasn't trying out for NFL teams anymore. I was trying out more so for the CFL and Arena Football League. And my coach told me he erased all film from the year because they needed space on the SD cards, for that season coming up. Obviously, that was a lot for me, being someone who was a free agent, someone who was desperately working on tryouts, someone who was training with athletes like Navarro Bowman, who currently coaches for the Chargers. A shout out to Toby. That was one of the trainers at the time that was giving me the greatest opportunity to make it into the league. Training with folks like Rodney McLeod, who played for the Eagles championship team back in the day. And also understanding my ceiling, outside of the things that didn't work out or fall into place well for me when it came to chasing the NFL. There's a reality that I was chasing the NFL with a stressed Achilles on my left leg from 2009 to present. So even if I cut weight, or even when I got stronger, I became more explosive, you still had to be hyper aware that your tire can blow at any time. And what does that look like as an athlete? You still had to be aware that, you may not be able to pick speed up, and you can't be playing in the NFL not running at least a 4.8 as a defensive tackle in the league who doesn't have any film, in order to jump off the page, or, not only to be about that life, but to be a killer in the sport. You really got to be willing to not just put everything on the line, but you have to be a better product than any other product that's ever been out there on the field. Super important. So, with that being said, you just really gotta, unfortunately, you gotta just accept your situation for what it is and make the best of it. And those are things I'd definitely be open to. If you ever have any athletes that you think I'd want to sit down with, or folks that you think I would need to talk to or have a sit down with, let me know. I mean, I have a couple of folks that play basketball overseas who I'm super close with. My boy Trevor, that TF365 is his platform, and he also has a Bulldog platform that he's built out in Texas. He knows a lot of athletes that I may be able to get in contact with. I mean, he's out in Texas, but they know I'd be willing to travel to have like a good interview, sit down, get to meet my folks in person. And I was, in terms of Trevor, he was like one of the first folks to ever sponsor me with clothing when I was trying out for the league, when I was building up, and when I was really about that life at that time consistently. And I mean, in this journey, he's also one of the few people that was like, hey, that YouTube thing that you're doing, stick with it. Keep building the platform. Keep doing what you need to do. He's like, what you're doing is going to touch a lot of people, and it's going to affect a lot of people, but it's also your job to continue to do that. And it's your job to continue to cut and build that path. And those are words that I've taken very seriously. Appreciate this batch of questions. Definitely looking forward to the next batch that comes through, so I can really sit down and think about why we have or haven't done, and then also be able to look back at these episodes and ask myself a month or a couple weeks later, hey, that suggestion, that I take it seriously, because I actually do a pretty good job of trying to hold myself accountable when it comes to suggestions, or people who've reached out to me, or someone who said, hey, that'd be a great fit if you did it. So just go and do it. It's your boy Juice Jones from Get Home Safe, here with another episode of Housekeeping. I don't know what episode it's been. It's been so long since I've done an episode, but I hope you come back to the channel, like, subscribe, share, you enjoy all the interviews that we have coming on Mental Health Monday and In My Shoes, in terms of the ASMR content that we're doing, where folks clean shoes, they give advice, they tell parts of their story. And I hope we're bringing a lot of understanding when it comes to the work that we're doing on this platform and Get Home Safe. So it's your boys, Juice Jones Create. Thank you for coming through. I appreciate y'all. I don't know if this is a look that I like, but I mean, you know, the first starter set on a whim of sitting down and turning the camera on and having this conversation, I don't think it's that bad. So I'll see you guys later. Peace.